Okay, a voice we are now all familiar with. All right, well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. Tonight we are hosting a forum for our state representative and state senate races. I'd like to take a moment to thank AAUW Tillamook branch for hosting this. This is an important feature that the organization brings forward during every election season, and it's nonpartisan. On our end, we do not take a stance on candidates. We do occasionally take stances on issues, but we don't take stances on candidates. Our intent here through these forums is to offer as neutral an opportunity for folks to hear from the candidates. The way that we take our questions is if we were in person, they'd be writing them down on note cards. And then I would be reading them. In this instance, I received a number of them by email. They will still be read to you anonymously as though we were in person. I've also set up chat to allow people to send me questions in chat. They will go directly to me. Part of that is just managing the questions. A lot of times there's duplicates. But also it allows an opportunity to make sure that the questions are being posed in a way that aren't inflammatory or defamatory. We want to make sure that the candidates also are in a safe place. At the same time, you may get some uncomfortable questions, and that's part of the process. I'd also like to thank the Headlight Herald for being a sponsor of this event and for all of the coverage that they provided for us this evening. We really appreciate that relationship. So for just general housekeeping, I no longer have to tell you where the restrooms are. If you're not sure where they are in your house, that seems to be a problem. But for the purposes of this event, as I mentioned, everybody except for the candidates are on mute. I will ask folks if you're comfortable to have your camera off. That's not because I don't want folks to be able to see you, but there is a bandwidth issue that can crop up when we have so many people online. So just keep that in mind. The candidates, generally, I would separate you out into categories, but after looking at the questions, they really do apply to all four of you. So what I'll probably do is initially in your introductory remarks, I'll do you by race, and then we'll open up the questions. And then in the closing remarks, again, we'll do you by the races that you're in, and just to kind of give some structure to that. There were a few questions that were specific, but not enough to warrant breaking you up. If the screen is distracting for you, you can always pin me or pin the speaker. That way, the only person that you generally see is the person talking. And then just another housekeeping is, I forgot to I was going to be all cool this time and give you guys some fancy time clock to help you with your time management. Well, as you can see me scrambling right now, that didn't happen. I will get that rectified, but I'm going to have a card. I think that's what I'll have to do as I look around my space here. I will get 2 pieces of paper. On one, I will write 30 seconds, and on the other, I will write 10 seconds. This is most important for the actual questions because you have 1 minute for your questions. And so you'll have 3 minutes for your introductory remarks, 1 minute per question, unless it's particularly complicated or it's multi-part, and then I may extend that time so that you have a little bit more room to answer. And then your closing remarks are 2 minutes, and your closing remarks can be about anything you've heard. It can be about why they should support you. It can be whatever you need your final moments with this audience to be. Take advantage of it because it's your 2 minutes. I'm going to be pretty strict on the time. However, unlike some other events, these are the only 2 races and there's only 4 of you. That isn't to say I want you to run over, but that extra 5 seconds to wrap up, I'm going to be a little more forgiving than I tend to be in general. Let me grab a marker really quick, and I want to just do a test to make sure you can see the number as I hold it up, and I'll get a dark background, so that should help as well. I do apologize for this. And of course, I'm recording this part, so that's awesome. In perpetuity, my error will be forever. All right. Can you see 30? Okay. Of course, I can't see you when I do that, so that's awesome. After all these events, you think I would have figured this part out by now. All right, so I think we'll start with the Senate race for opening remarks. And before I do, though, do you have any questions, candidates? Okay. So as I mentioned, you have 3 minutes for this first part. I will start with the Senate race. And let me get my handy dandy clock here ready. I would encourage you to have something next to you as well, so that we're all helping each other keep time here. But with that, Representative Weber, if you would like to, you went on mute. If you would like to start, yeah, I know, the dog. If you would like to start, I will cede the floor to you.
Thank you very much. And once again, I apologize. Our mail gets delivered a little late, and sometimes Martin also greets the mailman. So I apologize again. Good evening, everyone. And I want to thank AAUW and the Headlight Herald once again for providing us with the tradition of addressing the community and providing the community with the opportunity to get to know us a little bit better and to also discuss the issues. I'm a 52-year resident of Tillamook County, 30 years in the classroom. I've owned 2 small businesses with my sister-in-law. I was 8 years city councilor, 10 years a mayor, and both of those were nonpartisan positions. And I have spent the last 2 years as the rep for House District 32. And I feel that I will, by being in the Senate, I will be able to continue my work for a longer period of time, because we have a lot of challenges to address as a state and as an area. We have education. We need to recruit, retain, and adequately compensate our teachers. We need to look at graduation standards and lagging proficiencies that happened as a result of COVID. We need to look at housing issues, the high cost of housing, building and buying. We need to look at homelessness. We need to look at the issues surrounding homelessness, like mental health and drug use also. We need to continue to look for options for providing safe childcare and safety, especially in our communities with our police and our sheriffs. And we also need to work to protect and sustain our natural resource-based economy. And so it's my goal to bring our rural Northwest common sense to the Senate so that we are protected and promoted, and the people that are here are forwarded in ways that our ideals hold dear to us. And so that's my hope. And I know I'm under 3 minutes.
Yes, you
Barking
are.
dog included. Sorry.
Understanding that that's probably going to be happening with you, I'll just keep my eyes if I have to unmute you for questions. Okay. All right, Ms. Bush. Did it work? Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to join you all, and I appreciate everyone's attention to be here and time, knowing that this is such an important time, participating in democracy and exercising your right to vote. So welcome. My name is Melissa Bush. I'm running for State Senate for District 16, representing Tillamook. As you all know, the district lines have changed, and so now all of Tillamook County will be part of Senate District 16, as well as Clatsop County, Columbia County, and some rural areas of Multnomah and Washington counties. I am a nurse and a mother, and I am running for the state Senate seat because I understand the issues that are impacting our communities and working families in a very deep and personal way because of the work that I do in our communities every day. I like to share a little bit about my background as I kind of set the stage for you all about why I'm in this race. When I was 15 years old, I found myself in my local public health clinic where a nurse told me that I was pregnant. And I spent many months following that, trying to determine how I was going to be a parent at that time. And I navigated a lot of really complicated systems and ultimately found that I wasn't able to be the parent that I wanted to be, and that the expectations that I had of myself. And so instead, I planned a adoption for my daughter, and I became a birth mother instead. The reason that I share that on the campaign trail and share that with you all here this evening is because it was really my first understanding of the way that public policy impacts our personal lives. And now as a nurse in our communities, I see that and understand that even more deeply. The work that I do as a nurse now takes me into people's homes. I am a home health nurse, so I visit people all across the community in so many different settings. I spend time with them at their kitchen table. I get to know their families, their children, their grandchildren, and I see the things that are really not working for so many of the folks in our community. This is an issue that's impacting everyone in our state, but we feel it so much more deeply in rural communities like those in Senate District 16. So I know that it's not just bacteria and viruses that make us sick. It's all of the things that go into creating healthy communities in the first place. We need to ensure that we're addressing our housing crisis, that we're fully funding public education, that we are addressing childcare shortages and elder care shortages for our aging community members. And these are some of the reasons that I'm running for this seat, because I understand how deeply those issues impact our communities every day. And I am ready to go to Salem to make sure that we are advocating and fighting for working families all across this district. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll move into opening remarks for the state representative race. And this time we can start with Mr. Lady.
Hello, and thank you, Lisa, the Headlight Herald and AAUW for not just your commitment to our county, but also our community college. I'm Logan Leahy, a small business nonprofit consultant from Tillamook. I spend most of my time working for the Emergency Volunteer Corps at Halem Bay, although most people here would know me from knocking on their door in support of the Oregon Health Plan or workforce housing, or maybe from serving on our urban renewal agency. Point is, I have a track record of diving in, learning from our leaders, whether it be business, local government, or many nonprofits, and actually doing the work for our community. Advocacy opened my eyes to our needs and how we can work as a community to solve these problems. When I worked for a local dentist, I saw folk defer care due to insurance caps. I was one of these patients, and knowing how families shuffle medical debt inspires me to declare that quality, affordable healthcare is a right. I took this conviction and volunteered after work to organize and protect the Oregon Health Plan that I didn't even belong to, but my patients did. but Oregon still leaves too many behind. We need to expand access to the Oregon Health Plan, better cover vision especially, and come to an understanding that child and elder care is healthcare. Just earlier today, I spoke with a gentleman from North County, very soft-spoken. He told me of how the care facility closures here under care and our lack of providers prevented their family from truly living their retirement here on our coast. We can do better, and we must do better. I fought for and actually lobbied in our capital for the Student Success Act that invested in our kids and level the playing field with the metro counties. In the districts that took full advantage of all of its programs, we saw a 30% decrease in the dropout rate over COVID compared to other districts. And we did this through an equity lens. Most small businesses didn't pay a dime. We need programs that are capable of preparing our kids to work above minimum wage, to afford housing here, and to bring back our small businesses. We need schools that are grounded in tolerance and inclusion, where everyone can and will succeed. And we need parents to have more access to our schools. And more importantly, we need workforce housing so our schools and community colleges are fully staffed. I speak of these economic issues from local experience, my business, my education, and from serving on urban renewal. Some here actually take thousands from pharma, rental investment companies, insurance adjusters, and corporate bankers. What do all these have in common? A track record of exploiting our coast and our housing market for folk who don't even live here. My values come from my upbringing, my faith, and my community. I took these values to create a policy platform built by and for our district, actually meeting with city planners, local developers, healthcare professionals, childcare providers, nonprofit directors, and school leaders to identify what we can do together to build a stronger community. I look forward to hearing from you tonight to learn, because I always learn a lot during these, and to serve. Thank you.
Mr. Javity.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Cyrus Javity. I'm a dentist reporting to you live from the dental office, but no one's here anymore but me. I want to also thank Lisa and the AAUW, as well as Headlight Herald, for putting this all together, and an opportunity to speak with each of you. A little bit about me. I am from Utah originally, moved to Oregon after I finished dental school. We've been here since '08. Lived in Astoria for a little bit, and then down here in Tillamook, where I have a private practice. There's 4 doctors here, and we see about 10,000 patients a year, and provide the full scope of services from Oregon Health Plan eligible patients to private pay and commercial. And we try to make it an open door for everybody, even if they have an inability to pay. We moved to Oregon because we got tired of big city life. We wanted smaller communities where you know your neighbor, where what you did may matter, where you could see somebody at the store, and you know, there might be a patient or a friend or a school teacher. And I felt like that sense of community was good for raising kids and good for just overall health. Plus, we loved the clean air and the lots of things to recreate and do. So why am I running? I mean, just like everybody else probably on this forum tonight, just frustrated with the way things have been going for the last 10 years. We've seen solutions proposed and implemented, but things have just gotten a little bit worse, or a lot worse in some situations, ranging from education and law enforcement all the way to now out of control inflation. And while we can't hang every single problem around the necks of each of those leaders, we can look to you know, what the overall trend is. And so as a small business owner, I felt like the burdens being placed on not just us, but all my colleagues, as well as families who work for those small businesses, were just pushing people to the extreme, and for no tangible reason that would really benefit those people. So I thought it's time to go to Salem. Let's get rid of one party rule. Let's get back to some balance. Let's talk about some good solutions, because I think we have far more in common as Democrats and Republicans, independents, and the rest as than we don't. And so let's talk about what those solutions are and work together. And that might mean doing a 180 on some of those policies that have been passed in the future. And it might mean, as Republicans, you know, compromising a little bit on some things so we can move forward too. So thank you again, Lisa, and looking forward to the discussion.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, now we'll move into the interactive part for all of you. I'll just try and shake it up so that no one person has to be the first one to go and no one person has to be the last one to go. I'm not sure which is worse sometimes. So let me pull up the list of questions here. And for those of you online with us this evening, we have about 12 questions. That seems pretty doable. So if folks would like to have some additional questions asked, you can use the chat function. It will go directly to me, so that anonymity that we generally get in our face-to-faces will continue. Let me get my timer here again. Thing. All right, so for the first question, we will start with Mr. Javidi. And these questions that I'm reading to you from what was submitted earlier, I'm actually reading them in the order that they came in. So there's no real rhyme or reason. All that I've done is make sure we don't have duplications. So the first question is two-part, but all together. So I think this is a fairly simple question in terms of time. What endorsements have you received so far, and why are those particular endorsements important? And let me unmute everybody again, because you're very kind and you're used to etiquette for Zoom, but you don't have to mute yourself each time unless you have some noise you're trying to avoid. So Mr. Javidi, if you'd like to start, and I'm happy to repeat the question since I just yammered on for a few minutes there.
Yeah, just real quick. I think you asked about endorsements, but then the second part.
I did. The question is, what organizations have endorsed you and why are those particular endorsements important?
Well, I think ones that are relevant. Well, people that endorse generally have some type of interest in the community. So the National Federation of Independent Businesses and Oregon Small Business Association are two that want to support small business owners. The sheriffs of Oregon and the Oregon Chief of Police have endorsed because they believe that I will speak up for their interests in Salem when it comes to law enforcement issues and increasing the number of law enforcement, reducing crime. Oregon Farm Bureau, which is it's a given. We live, in a heavily rural area with dairy and some other agriculture as our main economic drivers. Also, the Association of Oregon Loggers, which again is understandable. Crime Victims Unit and more. So I think they're important because people want a voice, and people tend to, thank you, bond together for a common purpose so that they can have a simple message that they can share with legislators. And the way that we've developed to do that in this state is through groups, associations, and those groups and associations want to support their candidates by meeting with them and talking with them. So I think it's important that we don't infringe on their rights of free speech and how they get their message to their candidates.
Thank you. For the candidates, you may have noticed we went a little over a minute. Once Mr. Javidi started talking, I realized that the question might have been a little more complex than I originally read into it. So you each have a minute and a half if you'd like to take that time. So Mr. Lady.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I am most proud of my community endorsements, whether it be from agency directors that we elect or from our county commissioners, Webb and Thompson over in Clatsop County, for example. I'm proud of the doctors and healthcare practitioners who I've got this support from. I'm also very proud of all the letter to the editor writers who not just decided to publicly support me, but also put that into page and put their name on their line in support of a vision that they hadn't put in, right? Who are we listening to? I'm looking to the people we're actually electing. And place in positions of trust to move us forward. I'm also very proud of all of my working organization endorsements, especially the electricians, who are very interested in making sure that we have a healthcare program that works for every single working person in this area, and that we have a housing plan, that we have a housing system that will allow people to not just rotate all around the state, but actually plant roots on the coast if they want to. Those are what I'm most proud of. I'm most proud of small town mayors like David McCall and Tim Hall over in Bay City and Garibaldi, respectively. I'm very, very proud that I earned the Independent Party nomination and the Working Families Party nomination in addition to my own banner. And I look forward to serving everyone in the state capitol. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let me unmute our Senate candidates here. Okay, Representative Weber, if you'd like to lead with the question.
Thank you. I think one of the best endorsements that I had was in 2020 when the people of House District 32 endorsed me to be their representative in Salem. And in this race, I'm really proud to have even more endorsements than I can list. But some of them that are very important to me and are representative of a lot of different groups that I support are the Oregon Farm Bureau and the Washington County Chamber of Commerce and the Oregon Chiefs of Police and the Sheriffs of Oregon and the Crime Victims United and Oregon Small Business, Associated Oregon Loggers, Oregon Family Farms, Associated Oregon Sportsmen's Association, and in recognition to my dedication to education, I am the only Republican that is endorsed in the Senate by Stand for Children.
Thank you. All right, and Ms. Bush.
Thank you. I think this is an important question. I think just like in our personal lives, who our friends are, show who we are and reflect on our character. So does endorsements when it comes to campaigns for public office. I would like to acknowledge and thank the endorsements from the Oregon Education Association, the Oregon Nurses Association, both organizations that I am very proud to be supported by, as well as a member of with the Nurses Association, as well as a lot of our partner labor organizations that do a lot of the infrastructure work across this district and across the state. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Oregon Builders. Those are folks that are working on growing apprenticeship programs in our state, and they know my commitment to that type of work and growing our workforce, as well as resolving a lot of the housing issues that are plaguing our district. I'm proud to be endorsed by the District Attorney of Columbia County, Jeff Oxier, who has spoken publicly about my commitment to public safety, and has also acknowledged that I am someone who not just talks the talk, but I really walk the walk when it comes to my concern for safety in our communities, and that I don't need to use it as a political ploy to do so.
Okay. We've hit time.
Thank you. I thought we had 1 minute and 30 seconds.
You did.
But great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So for the listening audience, a minute can either last 2 hours or 10 seconds when you're answering a question. So I totally appreciate how hard it is to keep track. It was a bit over 1:30. Just as you're watching this, understand that this is hard. This is really hard to be on the other side and doing this and taking really important questions and trying to turn them into a 1 minute meaningful soundbite. It's not an easy task. So I applaud all of you for your efforts in trying to make that the case, because this next question, I think I also should probably give you 1.5 minutes. So it's around housing. Okay, so we're going to shoot for a minute and a half here. So I'm just actually going to do reverse now. And I'll start with you, Ms. Bush. And the question is, what specifically have you done to address the housing crisis in our area? And how have you been involved? So let me unmute you and start the timer here. Okay.
Thank you. Well, as you all know, I'm not currently an elected official, so my involvement has been in the capacity of learning about the challenges that are facing our communities and developing partnerships with folks on the ground throughout the district that are working on these issues currently. I've been very happy to attend several meetings with the Tillamook Housing Commission and working closely with the planning committee on a lot of the solutions that they've been working on that have been bipartisan and collaborative with organizations across the county and across the district. And that's work that I intend to continue. I've also been working and learning from the current senator that is the chair of the housing committee rather, in the Senate, Senator Casey Jama. And I have been talking with them, with the housing committee about a lot of the work that they've been doing at the Senate level and some of the upcoming legislation opportunities that we have in Salem to be really funding housing in a way that is meaningful, especially for districts like ours that are experiencing a critical crisis.
Great, thank you very much. Representative Weber. Oh, sorry.
Martin has left the building.
Oh.
So the question was, how have we been involved in helping to solve the housing crisis? Is that correct?
It is, and specific to, and also in our area. So how have you been involved, and how have you been involved in addressing the housing issues in our area? Well, good heavens. I'd stop the time, so don't worry. The question specifically was, what specifically have you done to address the housing crisis in our area? And how have you been involved?
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, the housing issue in our area is extreme. And I realized that several years ago, while I was city councilor and also while I was the mayor. When the county formed the Housing Commission, I was on one of the first commission appointments. And I maintained that until I went to the House. There were a lot of issues that we worked with, especially legislative issues, and forming the committee to make sure that it was going to be successful and indeed address the needs of Tillamook County. In the legislature, I was also a member of the Housing Committee, and we spent a lot of time trying to decide how we were going to get around some of the issues of what we have in our state as far as land use and planning to be able to allow more housing. In the city, I was involved in making sure that we were always on the lookout for additional developers to come into the area. And in this last summer, I was part of a task force on racial disparities in housing. And we are coming forward with 12 recommendations to the legislature to be able to solve some of those problems also.
Thank you. Let's see. Let me stop and reset. Mr. Lady.
Yeah, thank you. I think when we discuss issues like these, it's important to recognize when you have personal experience, because then you can move on into legislature and you really do have that commitment to the issue. When I came to this area with my family, we had a very difficult time affording a home on a public salary, and doing so in such a way that it wasn't necessarily a fixer-upper because we were all very busy trying to afford a place to live. This inspired me to dive in and advocate for workforce housing. So when the county commission here in Tillamook County decided to invest in workforce housing, that was challenged at the ballot. I was part of the crew, just self-organized ourselves to try to make sure that we actually pass this thing. Fighting, making sure that we set up forms and legislator and actually knocking on doors to get it through. Since then, I have been actively involved in trying to understand this issue from top down and from bottom up. Most recently with the Tillamook Urban Renewal Agency, where I serve as one of many directors, and we have actually the opportunity to invest in residential spaces. We try to look for what will actually provide a workforce housing, not a short-term rental subsidized with public funds, and be able to make sure that our funding stipulations make sure and have accountability structures that they go to the right families. Most importantly, recently, I've been working with our planning commissions, with our city planners to understand how a planning commission works and why our planning department is understaffed. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Javity.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a huge problem. I think we all are aware of that. Like Logan, when we moved here in 2012, it was bad then. It hasn't changed in 10 years. And we have to wonder why. When you look at the levers under control of government and locals, a lot of them aren't even in their hands. We can maybe adjust land use laws, and we can look at ways to develop and reduce system development charges. And people are talking about those things. As I've talked with realtors and county commissioners and mayors, they're all interested in a solution. And what we need to do is go to Salem and say, hey, enough is enough. We need to relax some of these land use laws. We need to expand urban boundaries slightly because the rules change once you're a part of a town. So specifically, what have I had to do? We can't hire enough people because they can't find places to live. So what we've had to do as a business, and others like the creamery and the hospitals have done the same, we're renting or buying homes when possible, but mostly renting spaces and letting our employees move in there at reduced rent or no rent at all, just so we can fill those spots. That's an industry solution. It's something that really is the only thing under our control right now. But what we need more houses. And the only way to get more houses is to increase the supply. And one of the reasons houses are so expensive right now, and it's inflation. You can't dump $2, $3, $4 trillion into the economy, and people run around buying homes and not see prices go through the roof. So we have to dial that back. We need to take control again over those levers.
Thank you. Our next question is, this is a yes or no question. Would you, how's that? I'm just gonna change the wording just a little bit. Would you agree wholeheartedly that Joe Biden is our duly elected president, voted in by the majority of Americans? Yes or no? And so I will start with Mr. Lady.
Yes, not just Americans, also the Electoral College.
Okay. Mr. Javity.
Yes.
Thank you. Representative Weber.
Yes.
Oops, let me unmute you. Sorry, Ms. Bush.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Our next question is, well, actually, this is specific to you, Dr. Javity. I'm so sorry. I keep calling you Mr. I should be calling you Doctor. I apologize.
That's fine. Mr. Doctor looks good.
Sure, but you worked hard for that. Please explain what home rule and constitutional sheriffs are and why you support this philosophy and this organization that espouses it.
Say it again.
Okay. Please explain what home rule and constitutional sheriffs are and why you support this philosophy and this organization that espouses it.
I don't know that I have an opinion on this one. I'm
Okay.
unfamiliar with this. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. And it was specific to you. I wasn't. So if the answer is, that's a good, that's a fine answer. Okay. Well, then we will move into the next question. This is for all candidates. It's a little lengthy, but the person that put it forward felt it was important that you hear the context. So Representative Gomberg sets the gold standard for communicating with his constituents via his weekly legislative updates, in which he tells us what congressional affairs are upcoming, what his thought processes are about pending legislation, gives informative notes on tsunamis, earthquakes, and wildfires, among other things, and keeps us smiling with quirky coastal tidbits. If you are elected, will you pledge to use the Legislative Update Forum to help your constituents know what you are doing and thinking, along with the other methods of outreach? Representative Weber, as the lone candidate that has had the opportunity to use the Legislative Update Forum, will you pledge to use it more generously than in the past and not make your constituents look for information? Okay, so the first part of the question is for everybody, and then there's that addendum for Representative Weber, as she is the only one that has been in this position to this point. So we can start with, well, since the last question was just a yes or no, we'll start with you, Mr. Lady.
Yes, thank you. I count Representative Gomberg as a good friend of mine, and I think I am also likewise impressed by his writing skills and his staff's writing skills. I promise to send as frequently, definitely, and try to keep in communication, not just with our legislative update, but also through our newspapers, if they'll let me print, and through radio, and just by actually trying to attend as many community meetings as possible, including, especially in our cities that are frequently underrepresented. There is one thing, though, that I can't promise, and that is it's going to be as quirky and fun as Gomberg. I can try. I will try, but I'm not sure I can get to that level in 6 to start off with.
Quirky was a good word. Dr. Javity.
Yes, I plan to use whatever the office resources we have, as well as staff, to communicate clearly with constituents back in the district, and keep them up to date as thoroughly as possible, so that there's as much transparency and feedback as is possible.
Great, thank you. Ms. Bush? Oh. You're testing me.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I do also have dogs in my home that I'm trying to avoid interruptions for other candidates when they're speaking. So that's the only reason I'm muting myself in between. And so thank you for your patience.
Yes, absolutely. Now you can start.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. For those of you that have already been following my campaign, you know that I'm currently sending out weekly newsletters, and I let folks know where I'm going to be in the district. I let folks know how they can reach me. I let folks know what meetings I've been having with community leaders, with elected officials. And I do my best to walk in the footsteps of Representative Gomberg in terms of my own occasional quirky anecdotes. But I do think that transparency and accessibility is critical from our elected officials, and making sure that that our constituents know not only what we're up to, but how to reach us and how to engage. So I encourage anyone to follow along that would like to by going to my website and signing up for the newsletter. And I absolutely am committed to continuing that practice once elected.
Great, thank you. And Representative Weber.
Thank you. I didn't send out nearly enough, but you know what? Once you get to Salem and you find out all you have to know in order to just navigate through the building, there's a lot you have to do, and you find out that your staff is limited, and so you do have some challenges, but I was able to provide newsletters. I think that my way of reaching out to people was on the Tuesday morning community report that the county has been so generous to be able to provide for us. But yes, I will pledge to have more communication with folks in the district on a more regular basis. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, our next question is, when you talk to constituents, what do you most often hear as their concerns and what do you tell them? All right. Let's see, who have we not started with? I think we haven't started with you, Representative Weber. When you're ready.
Okay, I have a lot of constituents who contact me on a regular basis. One of them is really concerned about the flyovers at the airport. One of them is really concerned with male health. I also have a lot of people who are concerned with their ability to get a firearm or not, to get unemployment or not, to be able to get health care. I have developed a network of people that I can reach out to in order to solve a lot of these problems, thanks to Senator Johnson, who she does an excellent job at that, and she has been very gracious in helping me to find out who those people are that I need to go to solve my constituents' problems. I enjoy it. A problem is a challenge, a solution, and it makes someone whole.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Bush.
Thank you. Well, I have been knocking doors around this district and in Tillamook County since almost a year ago, talking to voters door to door about their concerns and listening to those concerns so that I can understand the issues that are most impacting the people of this district. What I can tell you is that the things that I hear when I talk to folks at their homes are also the things that I hear and see when I am serving them in their homes as their patient or as my patients, as their nurse. And that I consistently see folks that are see and hear from folks that are struggling to meet their basic daily needs, struggling to meet their housing needs, keep food on the table, get their kids to school, have a quality education, that they don't have to worry about trying to navigate, educational alternatives, that these are all the basic fundamental human needs that people are struggling with. And that's what they're asking help from their elected officials to solve those problems.
Thank you. Mr. Lady.
Yeah, thank you. Like Melissa, I'm also knocking on doors and doing as much as I can. I think our campaign has done well over 15,000 now, all across the district. And what I'm hearing, it does depend slightly on what town you're in, but almost always housing is in the top 3. And I know this because I actually keep track of, we have long winding discussions usually at a door, but I always try to summarize it saying, what bucket does this fall under? That way, when I go into the legislature, I know what to prioritize. The biggest thing always comes down to housing and making sure that, especially in our communities slightly more Western, especially on the coastline, have better access to more housing, and that the housing stock that we do have doesn't get flipped into an investment property owned by an out-of-state corporation. The next thing I want to talk about, though, is really how diverse needs are. When I go to Cannon Beach, we're talking about education as our second priority after housing. When I'm in Tillamook, we're talking about career and technical in particular. And when I'm in Astoria, we're usually talking about contraceptive and abortion care. It's my role as a legislature not to do one-size-fits-all solution. And it's my role to actually have the community connections to lobby for specific communities with grant funding and with programs to meet individual needs. And that's what I intend to do.
Thank you. Dr. Javity.
Yeah, it doesn't take an economics degree, and people are feeling it. They don't love how much things cost. And so everything from price of gas to housing prices, the cost of food, and real wages have not kept up. they can't, people are not making as much money as they need to take care of their basic necessities and everything, especially those that are just getting started, fresh out of school, small families, the seniors who are on the fixed incomes, they're all feeling this pinch. So by and large, 99 times out of 100, things are too expensive. And then, after that, it's homelessness, it's crime, it's just, not wanting Portland to come to the coast. They want the coast to stay coast. They want, they want the natural resources. They don't want to see those policies drift over and start dictating the way we live our lives out here.
Oh, thank you. All right, our next question. In light of Roe v. Wade being overturned, this will be an important election for Oregon and may determine whether abortion protections in Oregon remain legally protected. What is your position on a woman's right to choose? And so let's start with, well, I think it's been a few moments now. So Dr. Javity.
Sure. I'm pro-life, and that's from the moment of conception all the way through the rest of their life. I think, Democrats want to put abortion on the ballot. I don't think it is. We live in a state where we're not going to see that change. What I am against, though, is using public dollars to fund people coming from out of the state to seek abortive care here. So, I'll leave it at that. But yeah, pro-life.
Okay. Mr. Lady?
Yeah. I had a friend who had medical complications during birthing, and I learned from their experiences and from them telling me about having to rush between different hospitals, how important it is to have a full suite of reproductive care all the time. I don't believe that this is necessarily the number one issue here on our coastline, but it is definitely among the top three. And I do believe that it actually is on the ballot, because if it wasn't on the ballot, National Right to Life wouldn't be financing my opposition.
Thank you. Representative Weber?
Thank you. I'm pro-life, and I think that this has become an extreme issue in Oregon. And I also think that it is one that is not on the ballot, but it is important. I feel that women's health is very important, but I also feel, and I have had this expressed to me by my constituents, is that they don't want taxpayer dollars to fund late-term abortions or out-of-state abortions. I am pro-life.
Thank you. Ms. Bush?
Thank you.
Yep.
I am a very pro-choice candidate. I've been clear about my stance on the issue of abortion. I am a nurse. I'm a mother. I believe in access to comprehensive, affordable, quality healthcare for every single Oregonian, and abortion is healthcare, period. I wholeheartedly disagree with the talking point that abortion is not an issue that's influential or of substance in this election. We are now in a position, because of the national overturning of Roe v. Wade, that each individual state will be responsible for making decisions about the legality and safety of abortion in each individual state. If my opponent is elected, and if Republican folks that have been very clear about their desire to overturn abortion rights have their way, and that becomes an issue that folks have to vote on, then it matters. whether we have someone who identifies as pro-life or pro-choice holding that seat and making those votes. So I disagree with that stance. And I also, just a closing point, I will say that for those that are concerned about the economics of our district, that abortion and reproductive health care is an economic issue. The ability for people to control their bodily autonomy is important.
Thank you. I appreciate that. These are definitely loaded questions with a lot of passion behind them. And this is not an easy question either. How do you feel about the global climate crisis, and what can the Oregon legislature do to mitigate its effects? Well, let's start with, I'm trying to think. Hopefully I've been doing everybody equally here. Ms. Bush, let me unmute you.
Thank you.
Yes.
For those of you that aren't already aware, I live on the Columbia County side of this district, of the Senate district, and I've been for the last 3 days barely able to go outside my home without an N95 on, because we have air quality that is so poor because of wildfire smoke that it is deemed unhealthy even for those that are not considered to be at the highest risk. The reality is we are seeing the impacts of a changing climate all around this state, all around this country, all around the world. And this district, including Tillamook County, are very vulnerable. If we care about our natural resources, we need to protect them. We need to make sure that those jobs are still available by ensuring that we value our natural resources. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time, that we can address the changes we're seeing and have thriving economic opportunities.
Thank you. Representative Weber.
We obviously need to make sure that our environment is protected so that we can make sure that we protect our water and our air and the beauty that's around us. But we also need to realize that climate change is a global problem, and that's going to need a global solution. And so we have to remember that we cannot destroy industries or families or jobs in order to lower the carbon emissions by less than a rational solution. So I am all for addressing climate change. I am also for addressing scientific practices in logging that will make sure that we don't have the smoke in the air as we have now. But we have to make sure that we do all of that in a very common sense way.
Thank you. Mr. Lady.
Yeah, I come from this from a seat of knowledge, at least on the response side of things. Working for the Emergency Volunteer Corps in Halem Bay as their volunteer program manager has given me a lot of insight into how critical this is becoming for not just Oregon, but especially our coastline. You know, it used to be that we didn't teach people about wildfire risk, right? But now we have to. We have to in our schools. We have to through our fire departments. There's a reason why the Keep Oregon Green signs are sprouting up everywhere here on the coast. And it's because our natural resources are burning up. It's because ocean acidification is hindering the Whiskey Creek Shellfish Hatchery from actually being able to complete their business and feed us. It's meaning that we have to make decisions, not just financial decisions, but also code decisions that will allow us to not just build more units, but also build units in a way that is fire ready. That's the biggest thing here, is fire ready, because I don't want our town to become the next Detroit. I want Tillamook County, I want the entirety of my district to be ready for when natural disasters come to us, like the tornado that hit North County a few years ago.
Thank you. Dr. Javidi.
Yeah, you know, I heard it recently said that the current efforts in the United States to curb the global climate issue is akin to straightening chairs on the deck of the Titanic. It looks nice, but it's just not going to move the needle. And we're spending too much money on solutions that just are not working, especially when you look at it globally. I mean, you've got China and India and these massive countries that are just not making those same tweaks. And so that puts us at an unfair advantage to the point where we're killing our natural resource industries. So I'm for incentivizing with government commercial partnership solutions that will continue to make sense, but I'm not for funding and subsidizing ideas that are so expensive that nobody in the right mind, except for a government who's bent on looking good and posturing for their base or for special interest groups to for those solutions. We have other problems: Oregon Health Plan, you name it, local infrastructure, to just name a few.
Thank you. Along some of the same lines, but definitely a different twist. What is your plan to help protect clean air and access to clean water for residents in your district? So it's much more local conversation. Let's start with Dr. Javity.
Well, I think we've already, tasked our loggers and our farmers and the industry that's here to do to keep the air clean, to keep the water clean, and they do. Sometimes the DEQ and Oregon DEQ is so punitive that they've made it almost impossible for small businesses to even survive. So what we need to do is continue keeping our eyes on it, looking for common sense solutions all up and down the coast. Look for ways to keep those clean. I know we've got Commissioner Yamamoto, who is passionate about this subject and keeping our water resources clean. And so we need more leaders like that, and we need to be a part of that discussion as we continue to keep the Oregon coast as pristine and beautiful as we can without crushing the local population who makes their living trying to take care of that environment as well as use those natural resources.
Thank you. Mr. Lady?
Yeah, I'm tired of these either or situations with industry and natural resource economy and with our ability to maintain a quality of life. We can walk and chew bubblegum. I grew up in a mining town. It was a Union town called Butte. It was a giant pit carved into the mountainside, looming above us because that's where all the mine runoff went. And it would fill to the brim with water so toxic that when it overflows, the entire town's drinking water would be taken out. It used to be a town inside of that pit, but now it's a Superfund site, which means that the water is so toxic that the state and the federal government work together to clean and pump out the water. They use this money not only to protect the town, but to protect the birds from even landing on the water. I know what it means to not know if our drinking water is safe. In particular, I'm looking at a couple things. One, subsidizing our EPA certified air resource monitoring equipment, because now they've gotten very affordable. And if we can put one on every other light pole, that would go a long way to actually knowing where the trouble spots are. Secondly, trying to deal with our wildfire risk and making sure that when air pollution does come in, we actually have a education program in our community so they know how to protect themselves from asthma attacks and other issues that may come around because of seasonal allergies combined with the effects of climate change. Finally, I'm very interested in protecting our drinking water. And I think one of the ways that we can do that while protecting natural resources and actually benefiting the natural resource economy is through land swaps and protecting our watersheds. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Weber.
Thank you. While I was in the first session, I was given a sizable amount of money that I could allocate to my district. And I was able to get $2 million for Arch Cape so that they could have a protected watershed. And I think that that is a very important action moving forward to make sure that the small community of Arch Cape will always have safe drinking water. I've also looked at all of the issues of spraying, especially in logged over areas, to make sure that the insecticides and pesticides and whatever they spray on them is not going to be harmful to watersheds, so that we can guarantee that Netarch will have adequate water. And I was also able to get enough money to drill a new well in Bay City so that we could make sure that their water supply was stable also.
Thank you. Ms. Bush?
Thank you. I think this is an area where the legislature absolutely needs to be investing. These are issues that our state has to support the counties and municipalities and localities, because there are not enough local funds to be able to address the infrastructure needs to be able to ensure safe water quality, especially in our more rural communities. I've been meeting with local organizations, folks working on these issues, both in terms of water and air. It's something I am committed to. Again, I think that there's oftentimes been a false dichotomy that's set up that we can support natural resources or we can have clean drinking water and clean air to breathe. And I just think that's false. I think that we can have industries and also support the public safety and the public health of our communities. And I'm committed to doing that work.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of a shift here. How would you describe the economy now? And who will you be focusing on to help? Let me make sure I read this properly. Okay, how would you describe the economy and who will you be focusing on to help / look out for? So to help us or to look out for? And I assume there's a positive and a negative spin on that. And we can start with Ms. Bush.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch
Okay.
the question. Could you
Okay.
repeat it for me?
Certainly.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I stuttered a little bit.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
How would you describe the economy and who will you be focusing on to help or look out for? So I think I'm guessing here, hopefully I'm not misrepresenting the asker.
I think I
the
understand.
positives and the negatives, the pitfalls and the positives.
Sure. Thank you. I mean, I think that everyone here on this panel has acknowledged that we're hearing from constituents through the county, the district, across the state, and also that clearly people are talking about this at a national level, that the current inflation is really impacting folks on the ground, especially working families and people on fixed incomes. So I am not going to minimize that. I think that in terms of our local economies, we're struggling with issues around not necessarily the lack of economic spending, but more the lack of workforce, the lack of housing. The things that are impacting are the ability of our economy to really be like holistic and thriving. In terms of who am I concerned about looking out for, I'm looking out for the underdog. I'm looking out for working class folks across this community, across this district, people that are doing everything within their power to do the right thing and get by and aren't able to make that happen. And I want to make sure that we're creating policies and systems that uphold and protect those that are most vulnerable.
Thank you. Representative Weber.
Thank you. Well, if I was going to take one word and use it to describe our economy right now, I would say that it's uncertain, because we have inflation, we have a shortage of workforce, we have wages that may not be adequate, we have rents that could be possibly raising, the cost of groceries is going up. So I would say that it is very definitely uncertain. Now, who are we going to look for help? Well, one of the things that we've got to do is we've got to look at the cost of government, and if it means reducing taxes so that people will have more money to be able to spend, then we need to look at that. If it's going to be reducing fees for things that are charged, then we have to look at that. We have economic advisors at the state level who are working on that every single day. And I have the faith that they are going to be able to come forward with possible solutions. But we have to remember that this is not only Oregon, this is not only Tillamook, this is not only right here. This is a national problem. And with the war in Ukraine, it is a global problem.
Thank you. Dr. Javity.
Yeah, you know, if I had to use 2 words, it would be dumpster fire. I feel like things are just out of control. And I think what it boils down to is that there are so many parts and pieces that have been set in motion at the national level, like Suzanne was saying, at the state level and the local level, that we cannot get our arms around it. And you know, now we have rising, we've had out of control inflation, out of control interest rates. Not only are home prices massively expensive, the cost of money to borrow to buy those homes has gone through the roof up 50%. So who do we look out for as a small business owner? We all know, and any business owner would know this, the last person to get paid is the business owner. Everybody else gets paid first. I've got 25 employees that I think about every single day. And so just like now, I make sure they get paid, they have a good job, they're comfortable. When I go to Salem, that expands, you know, I'm going to be thinking of those small business owners. I'm going to be thinking of those working class employees, because they just want to buy groceries, buy fuel, maybe go to the movie. So let's stop eating up all this pie and make it possible for people to accomplish, you know, their goals.
Thank you. And Mr. Lady.
Yeah, so serving on urban renewal, I like to look at the numbers. Tillamook County has a little less than 20,000 people, residents, like full-time residents actually here and contributing to our economy. Of them, the natural resource economy and all of its adjoining sectors, like light manufacturing, provides equipment. That's about 20%, or 1/5. Retail and hospitality and the service industry is, of course, much like the rest of Oregon, fairly high, but especially here on the coast because of our additional tourist economy. Healthcare and government services are also up there. When I look to who am I prioritizing, I'm really looking towards the working person. And if every way that we can support small businesses or even medium and large businesses that have really great practices, that's what I'm looking at. On the economic side of things, I want to point out that we don't control the monetary supply as a state. So I want to set very clear expectations that our state economists that Representative Weber just mentioned, they tell us the only thing we can do to help inflation is by fixing the housing market, which is another good reason why it's at the top of my priority list.
Thank you. All right. Now we're going to go in a very different direction, and not a coastal issue, but one that you may find yourselves in the middle of when you are in office. Where do you stand on Greater Idaho? So I don't know. Mr. Lady.
I'm going to start off with a value, which is I believe people have the ability to make up their own decisions. And I think it's important for us as a legislature to honor that decision when the vote is explicitly telling people that this is not a study, this is an actual referenda. Then at the legislature, we have to make that decision. Secondly, it is a coastal issue because the easternmost areas, they contribute to state programs, which has to be distributed across the states. That said, I'm going to present a harsh economic reality. Just like we have donor and donee states in the state, in their national government, we also have that for counties in Oregon. Eastern counties traditionally take more from state resources than we put in. So when I look at this issue, and when I look at the legislature, I'm thinking about 2 things. One, are we protecting the interests and the democratic interest of the people who live there? And 2, how will it affect me and my district especially?
Thank you. And thank you for holding me accountable, Mr. Lady. It is an important issue. It's struck me as funny coming up on our coastal side, but it is one you will have to deal with should you be elected. Okay, Dr. Javity.
You know, I think this is an example of where the current ruling party over the last 10 years has failed to really listen to rural voters to the point where they're driving them to want to leave the state. And these rural communities just want a voice and they want to be heard because the policies of Portland and Salem are crushing their existence out there. And so I'm for local control. And in that sense, I'm all about Oregon. And I think we need to be listening to these people and think, what do they need? And let's respond. And they've been deaf. I mean, to be honest, the only reason why the entire eastern half of the state wants to leave is because they feel like they're being ignored, dismissed. And, you know, when you have a supermajority who doesn't have to listen, that this is what the result is. So let's get back to some balance here. Listen to these people, figure out what the solutions are. And like you said, we're all part of the bigger whole. So let's work together.
Thank you. Representative Weber.
Thank you. Greater Idaho is quite a movement. And I think it is very indicative of our urban-rural divide. And I think it is very indicative of what people feel the area of the state that is getting the most attention, that is being the area of the state that is driving the state, and that is the Portland area and the Willamette Valley. And I think that the people in Eastern Oregon, along with the people along the coast, need to have someone listen to them and honor their requests. They aren't going to want to leave if someone will acknowledge the differences that we have between the Willamette Valley and rural Oregon, acknowledge them, honor them, and make sure that they are equal players in the game.
Thank you. And Ms. Bush.
Thank you. In my work as a nurse, working in our communities, I see people from all walks of life. I serve those folks regardless of their political party, regardless of their background, their socioeconomic status, their religious beliefs. I am committed always to providing equal care and compassion to every person I serve. And that's exactly how I would serve as your next senator. I understand that there are differences that are real about the needs of different areas of the state. And I think those are valid things to discuss. But just like I think that it is important that when we're legislating, that folks stay at the table and have conversations, I think that it is true for folks that live in this great state of ours that that trying to break off one large chunk of the state and succeed is not the solution. I think that we can solve problems if we work together. I think we can have difficult conversations. We can come to compromise and solutions together.
Thank you. Next, tell us your thoughts on SASO and Measure 114. Do you own firearms? Why? And should I? So do you own firearms? Why? And then should I? So, okay. Let's start with Representative Weber.
So what is SASO?
I'm sorry, that's what the question just said. I'm not entirely certain, but I think if you maybe direct it towards Measure 114.
I certainly will.
Yeah. I apologize that I can't explain that for you.
Well, thank you. We have an issue with shootings, that's clear. However, we always seem to rush to ban as many guns as possible to fix the problem, but we're only fixing a symptom. So we need to have real answers to why shooters are doing what they're doing. And so there has to be a reason why they're doing this, and no one is solving that question. But I do not about what we need to do, but Measure 114 and the gun control laws that the legislature keeps passing aren't going to stop the shootings. And what we're going to do, if you should be listening to Sheriff Brown and getting his opinion on this, they're going to throw us into a costly court fight that there's no winner except for the lawyers who are going to get paid. So I really don't think that we have a good answer by being a proponent of Measure 14, and I will not vote for it.
Someone kindly gave me the spell out for the acronym, which I should have known. The Second Amendment sanctuary measure is what that's referring to. And So that was on the primary ballot and was voted down. And now I think we're seeing measure 114 as a result of that. Is there
Oh.
anything you would like to add with that clarification?
No,
Okay. Ms. Bush.
Thank you. So just to clarify, the second amendment sanctuary ordinance, the Sasso ordinance was a local county ordinance. Measure 114 was put forth as a statewide ballot measure. So they are distinctly two different things. I did publicly speak about my non-support of Sasso, that I did not feel like that was a necessary measure, both from my conversations with law enforcement and with our local community members, and that it could actually hinder the ability for law enforcement to do the work that they need to do to keep our communities safe. And so I was not supportive. As far as where we're at now, Measure 114 is going before the voters. It's not a decision that will be made by the legislature. And it's at the will of the voters. And I look forward to hearing from folks about what their feelings are and about this measure. As far as that goes, I come from a family of hunters. I grew up with guns in the house and was taught a deep respect of how we handle weapons and understanding that they are indeed that, weapons. So as far as what I'm concerned about is public health and public safety, and we are in a crisis in those areas. I am very, it feels very unfortunate to me that every time we have complex problems that I hear folks say, well, it's too complicated, so we just shouldn't do anything. And that doesn't feel like a good solution to me. So what I'm committed to is listening to the voters and listening to the constituents, and moving forward. I have spoken with law enforcement about Measure 114, including Jeff Oxier, the DA that endorsed me. And I have gotten their input. I'm out of time to discuss that, but I will just leave it by saying that I think if Measure 114 is passed by the voters, that it's the will of the legislature to help make up those funding gaps so that they don't impact law enforcement. Thank you.
So that went a little bit over. So one more time, Representative Weber, is there anything that you'd like to add?
I did not address the fact that I do own guns. I come from a family of hunters and gatherers. And so we have those things in our homes, and we always have had those things in our homes. And I also was not in favor of the SASO, but I am a strong proponent of the Second Amendment.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Dr. Javity.
Sure. I am against Measure 114. I think that well, number one, the gate's unconstitutional, and we're going to have to, if it passes, Oregonians are going to have to pay for it in the court to fight it. And number two, I think this doesn't demonstrate to me, and if you ask anybody, how does this reduce gun violence? Nobody has an answer, because people are buying guns, and I own a gun, not to run out and start shooting people with them. It's for self-defense. We had a little old lady and a man here in the beginning of the year who, a homeless guy, busted into their house. Had she not had a gun, who knows what would have happened to her. And so I think we need to not make it harder on grandma and grandpa, or the single mother, or whoever else. If they want to own a gun and own it responsibly, let's not put more obstacles in their way. But I am also totally in favor of making our schools safer and protecting our children. And that is a complicated problem. And sometimes the answer is no, because the solutions offered are horrible. We need to go back to the drawing board and get some compromise. And we'll do that in the future when we work together with more balance.
Thank you. Mr. Lady.
Yeah, I believe part of my role running for office, but also in office, is to educate. On the Sasso Amendment, which is the Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance, I came out then very strongly against it, because I believed it would impede our law enforcement from being able to do their job, especially around red flag laws for domestic abuse people, and trying to make sure that they do not have a weapon while they're actively being sued for domestic violence. On the issue of Measure 114, I've been fairly clear from the start. I agree with the basic intent. I'm not sure about the policy mechanism. Thankfully, it's one of those measures that's phrased in such a way that we, the legislature, have some say in implementation, so we can actually make sure that people who are gunners, like myself, want to answer all parts of this question. I own rifles, mostly for hunting. Also, a couple are family heirlooms. One of them is range ready. We do own pistols. I do own a bow. I do have a sports pack, which is the Oregon Hunting and Fishing Recreation Pass. And primarily it's for recreation. I do like shooting skeet, but it's been a long time since I've had the opportunity to. Why you would want to is mostly for recreation. I think there is some arguments for your own safety, depending on where you live. And generally, I am in support of having responsible gun laws and electing people who actually know the difference between a magazine and a barrel. And I'm not implying my opponent doesn't, but just making sure that we actually have people who understand these laws and can implement them correctly and work with all groups, especially our own communities and our own police officers, to make sure it's done fairly and preserving our rights.
Thank you. This is kind of a broad question. Do you think we will ever have affordable health care for all Oregonians? Let's make sure you're unmuted. Ms. Bush.
Thank you. The Healthcare for All Oregon Task Force has been working on research and studies around how Oregon could model a universal healthcare plan in Oregon to ensure just that goal, that every single Oregonian would have access to affordable healthcare. And there will be a ballot measure. Measure 111 will be on the ballot on the ballots that are coming out in the mail this week. And that would give voters the opportunity to tell the legislature if they feel like healthcare is a human right and enshrine that right in our Constitution. If that is the case, then it will be up to the legislature to address the concern of voters. I personally do support the work of the universal, the task force on healthcare. And I think that this absolutely could come before the legislature in 2023 in terms of guaranteeing that every single Oregonian has access to quality, affordable healthcare.
Great, thank you. Representative Weber.
Thank you. I agree that we all need to have access to affordable healthcare. And we have really worked toward this. But the thing that I don't want to see is another program being established, because, you know, in the state of Oregon, we have a history of establishing programs and then not being able to fully fund them into the future. And if that is going to come on the backs of the taxpayers, I think that it is something that really needs a lot of study, a lot of thought, and a lot of preparation before it comes before the legislature or it comes before the voters. Because I don't want to, once again, make it so that our taxpayers are overburdened by a program that is not well thought out.
Thank you. Mr. Lady.
Yeah, programs don't just come to the legislature. We have a very active role in creating them and fleshing out what they'll look like. And through the insurance task force, I believe that we are coming to ideas that can actually be implemented. To address the question, a friend called me a pragmatic optimist, and that's how I see myself too. I do believe that we can get to a state where affordable healthcare is available for every person. And to do that, we have to recognize an economic reality. Healthcare policy is dictated by 3 points of a triangle. It's called the iron triangle. It's access, quality, and price. The only way that we can do all three at once is if we start to provide an insurance system that allows more on the nonprofit or government ideals rather than profits, and especially investor profits. If we can start to move in this direction, we can advance all three simultaneously. I'm also particularly interested in local grant and community project funding to make sure that our community health centers and our private practices are well represented and are able to provide the most services for the least costs, but actually support themselves and make sure that we can provide specialty care in this district again. Thank you.
And Dr. Javity.
Sure. I agree the healthcare costs are skyrocketing. 5 years ago, or not maybe 5, maybe 10 years ago before Obamacare, I was spending $200 a month for a family of 7 for health insurance. Now it's $2,000 a month for insurance. So it is expensive. But I don't think that the answer is a $22 billion tax on Oregonians, especially when we have inflation that's out of control, to try to fund a program when we have a track record of failed policy solutions like Measure 110, which is still dead out the gate. We're not getting the money to the resources we needed to help curb the tide of drug use in Oregon. So I don't trust that we can do this with a $22 billion program. And I think one solution might be a sliding scale for Oregon Health Plan based on income. Right now, you either qualify or you don't. And I'd like to see us expand that for them so that we can provide a wider range of benefits to the Oregonians that need them the most, and look for ways to make the burden less intense on small business employers and on individuals. Paying $600 a month for an insurance premium per employee or $2,200 for a family is ridiculous.
Thank you. All right. Next question is, how would you rate Kate Brown's job performance? Specifically, how well do you feel she responded to the COVID pandemic? And so we can start with you, Mr. Lady.
Career and technical education towards the end of her term. Specifically towards the end of her term, I think that would be around an A. When it comes to the COVID pandemic, I'm of two minds about it, because on one side, I worked for a dental office when we got very harsh restrictions that flew in the face of modern medicine, experienced layoffs, and that's what spurred me to create my own business. On the other side of things, we also had the least death of almost any other state because of this virus. So I'm going to go for a solid C there. Like, I'm not sure if she passes, but I'm going to go for a C minus. Generally, when it comes to accountability of budgets, that's where I start to really be pissed off, because I fought for Measure 114 and trying to make sure that we could, sorry, not 114, the drug rehabilitation measure. And I'm really disappointed with how it's been administered. I recognize that part of this is executive, but also part of this is an independent commission that the legislature decided to design without any oversight. So I think I have lots of mixed emotions around our prior governor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Javity.
Yeah, I think Governor Kate Brown's done a horrible job. I mean, I think she's not ranked the least favorite governor in the country for no reasons at all. You see what happened to our children with the schools closed down. We prioritized vaccines in the most wonky way I've ever seen. We have, as a small business, and not just my small business, businesses of all size, we're forced to lay off all of our employees based on an executive order with no idea when we'd go back. So, you're going to your banks and your suppliers and everybody else saying, hey, I'm sorry, but all the money that I owe, I'm not sure if we'll ever get to pay that back because the governor decided that we needed to close down. Instead of trusting the businesses and schools and parents would do the right thing to protect their children or protect themselves, she took it upon herself, along with the rest of the executive and the legislature, to decide what would be best for us. And I just disagree with that approach.
Ms. Bush.
Thank you. I think that the COVID-19 pandemic has been the biggest challenge of our recent history. And I think that when we are in the face of unprecedented challenges, that I think that it's very easy for, quite frankly, anyone to sit back and hand out, hindsight criticism. As a nurse and someone who was tasked with keeping people alive during the 2 years of the pandemic that we've been through so far, and a pandemic that is not over. I understand that our governor was doing what I believe was the best that she could do under the circumstances with ever-changing information and very complex problems to solve in terms of keeping public health and also economic interests at hand and in mind. So I don't believe in giving our elected officials letter grades. I believe that there is a lot more nuance to making effective policy, especially in a time that was as unprecedented as the last 2 years.
Thank you. And Representative Weber.
Yeah, like most Oregonians, when the pandemic started, I appreciated her overcautious actions, because I was overcautious also. And it seemed to be the most rational and conservative thing to do. But after the vaccines were readily available, she continued to shut down our economy and our schools. And we've seen the results of that. And now we have students who are, 2 years behind in their education. We have small businesses that were thriving that are now gone because of Kate Brown's shutdowns. But the thing that really has made me the most concerned was when we talked about budget, and my focus was on fully funding education first. And I fought hard to make sure that we would have that fully funded budget that would go forward. And when it got to the governor's desk, she vetoed it. And so everything that she had done up to that point was magnified, because once again, we were not fully funding education, and we had the money to be able to do it.
Thank you. Well, that leads into this next question. Sorry, it's in the chat box here. What do you think about abolishing the kicker refund and using money for other needs such as healthcare or education? Representative Weber.
Well, that's really an interesting question, because you know what? That kicker is in our Constitution. We in Oregon don't have a money problem. We have a spending problem. And every politician that, somebody yells squirrel wants to go after the kicker. And that money is there to go back to the people. And that is how the people wanted it to be. Now, I can understand how it would be an attractive looking pot of money that people would want to grab at. But if that is going to be the case, then we need to go back to the voters, we need to go back to the legislature, and we have to decide, is the kicker the best way to handle this or not? And if it's not, then we need to abolish it. But until that time, since it is a constitutional part of Oregon's economy, we need to honor it, and we need to make sure that we are not robbing it on a regular basis.
Thank you. I'll wait till you get back. Okay.
My naughty dog is trying to eat the flower arrangement on my kitchen table, just for fun, I guess. Apologies. I am ready to start the timer. Thank you. I think that this is something I actually hear about very frequently from voters when we talk about revenue in the state, that I hear often from constituents and folks from both sides of the aisle and everywhere in between, that this is something that they would like revisited. And I would absolutely support that. One, because I hear it from voters, and two, because unlike my opponent, I do not believe that Oregon has a spending problem over a revenue problem. The problem with ideas like the education first model is that it also relies on defunding wraparound services that I know educators see as critical to the work that they do. And that we have literally sat here in this panel today and talked about all of the avenues throughout this district that need greater investment, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's housing, whether it's education and healthcare. So I do actually think we have a lot of opportunity to increase our revenue, and I'd like to do it in a way that's responsible and isn't on the backs of businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Javity.
No, the kicker should never be touched. That's owed back to the taxpayers. We can find ways to reprioritize spending to stay within the budget.
Thank you. Mr. Lady.
Yeah, so the kicker is in our Constitution. At the legislative level, we cannot touch it. In fact, I am not aware of any attempts that have got past initial submission to the legislature. Like, I don't think it was ever heard in committee of actually threatening the kicker in that way, the personal kicker. The business kicker has been, the voters went back out, then the voters decided that we were going to largely get rid of the business kicker, and that was settled business many years ago. When it comes down to the personal kicker, I recognize that there are a lot of programs that are underfunded, and that accountability for how we execute those programs need to be revisited. Especially, we are funding a lot of programs that are undermarketed. So like Oregon Project Independence, for example, which is a way for us to ensure that retirees that need medical care can stay in their home rather than being in a care facility. It's super unmarketed, and it's costing the state money to house people who would prefer to live on their own with occasional services. In order for us to actually talk about policy solutions and financial solutions, we have to trust our economists. And the kicker, for all of its good and bad, the one thing the kicker does really well at is it forces us to have a as accurate as possible expectation of revenue and expense. That's one thing that I appreciate about the kicker. One thing that I don't appreciate about the kicker is when it comes to the sustainability of our programs. Sorry, I went over time.
That's okay. I don't usually do a deep sigh. That just came out. I'm so sorry, Logan. We could probably have sessions on each one of these questions. So I sometimes I'm just like, oh, I just know how tough this is for you. So we have time for one more question, if everyone sticks to their minute, and then we'll wrap up with your 2 minutes. And I'm going to leave you with a feel-good question, or I hope that it is. What experience do you have connecting the community to resources and creating opportunities for them, both for the resources and for the community? And let's start with Mr. Lady.
Yeah, I'm going to take this approach in 2 ways. One is actually making sure people have access to programs. And the second is helping people use their voice in our elected spheres. The first one, I serve on urban renewal. I am faithfully attend as much as I possibly can. And we are able to actually connect small business owners, residents, in order to build projects that benefit our entire community, and especially the tax base that supports our local schools. I am so proud of our work there, not just in my limited term, but also over the course of urban renewal. I had a supporter write a letter to the editor recently who said that in his personal opinion, every substantial investment in the Tillamook area had some relation to TURA funding, and it speaks to our willingness to get out into the community and find projects, not just put out a newspaper ad. The second thing is electorally. I've been very active in helping people make sure that they can have their voice, not just by participating in politics, but also serving as an elected body president when I was at the community college on the school board, but also working with people writing testimony in order to go to the legislature, helping them out, because I've been in the legislature and I have some understanding of what themes work and what themes don't. Thank you.
Dr. Javity.
Sure. Yeah, speaking of TURA, we benefited from that as well. It's a wonderful program here in Tillamook, and it was designed to help small business owners reinvest in the community to continue to provide services the community needs, whether it's retail or healthcare. And as far as what we've done to connect, to give back or connect people in this community, I'm a small business owner, a job creator. We've created nearly 30 jobs over the last 2 to 3 years. That puts money into the pockets of people. They're good paying jobs. I volunteered on the school budget committee. I volunteered on the school bond initiative. And just in general, tried to be supportive in every way we can as a citizen of the North Coast.
Thank you. Representative Weber.
Oh, thank you. I've had a lot of experiences in connecting the community and getting help for both people and for services. And I helped get funds in a grant to help our senior center so that it got new siding and an upgrade. And that was with the help of Senator Johnson. I am always willing to write letters in support of grants, and we've done a lot of them. When I was in the legislature, I was able to get resiliency money for Cannon Beach and to be able to make sure that the Astoria Library was handicap accessible. And right next to me is the Jerry Woodward Center, and I have been helping those folks to be able to get some upgrades to their building with their plumbing and electricity. And I also serve on the Marie Mills Board and the Education Foundation. So I think that I have been able to reach out to the community, besides working in my church, to be able to connect constituents with services and help.
Thank you. And Ms. Bush.
Thank you. In the work that I do, this is a huge part of my daily tasks. I see people in the community in my current role, and previously when I worked in the hospital setting, I helped people transition from the hospital back into the community. And I became very familiar with helping people navigate a lot of our local resources as well as state resources when it comes to things like accessing services for people with disabilities, in-home resources through our community action teams, through our local public health clinics. So that's definitely a lot of my daily work. And it also gives me a lot of insight into how challenging it is for people in the community to connect with those things. Additionally, I advocated recently for the funding package that was approved at the federal level for the Nehalem Bay Health Center and the Reinhardt Clinic, and was very proud to be able to support those efforts, and will continue to do so, as well as the publicly speaking out in favor of the Tillamook Community College levy to help grow the nursing and allied healthcare's center there at the community college.
Thank you. Okay, well, we are coming up against the end of our time. This is the first time where we've had such an opportunity to dive into these kind of questions with our state candidates. So this has been really exciting, some really good questions. I hope you feel like you saw a pretty broad spectrum of what was out there and what people are thinking about. So we're going to move in to your final 2 minutes. And then at the end of that, just in advance, in case people jump off after the last person spoke, I just want to thank everybody for being here and sticking around with us through this. I did see that there were some issues still with the Headlight Herald. So I did receive some emails during this. This will be posted on the Facebook page for Headlight Herald. And then we can make it available to you candidates if you'd like to also post it on your websites or other media to help get the word out. Okay. All right. So we're going to move into our last 2 minutes for each candidate. And so let's see, we went 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we'll start with Ms. Bush and work our way back.
Fantastic. Thank you. As I've traveled this district over the course of this campaign, I've had the opportunity to connect with so many people from every corner of the district. And I have had the opportunity to hear from so many folks about the things that they're concerned about, the things that they see as opportunities for themselves and their families, and the challenges that they're facing that are the obstacles in their way. I understand these issues because I see them every day in the work that I do. I also understand them because I live them myself as a working parent, a mother of school-aged children, a partner that also has a husband that works full-time as well. So I understand the issues that are impacting working class folks across this district. I am the only candidate in this race that is truly concerned about making sure that we are ensuring comprehensive, quality, affordable healthcare, including reproductive healthcare and abortion access in our district and across the state of Oregon. I am also the only candidate that's supported by educators and really understands the issues right now in our schools and the issues that are impacting families and our students. And I am proud to be endorsed by the Oregon Education Association and Oregon Association of Federation of Teachers because I share their concerns as someone who also works on the front lines. I am deeply committed to working for our community. I hope that you all will reach out to me if you have questions for me, and I hope that you will get your ballots in and make sure that you vote for Melissa Bush for State Senate for District 16, because I will work for you and fight for you every day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Representative Weber.
Thank you. I want to thank you again for once again keeping up the tradition of bringing this, the candidates in front of the community and being able to ask hard questions and to be able to talk about our campaigns. I think it's really important that we continue to look at the issues that are challenging us. Our education, our housing, our homelessness, our law enforcement, our natural resources, our economy, our highways, our bridges. All of those things need to be really internalized by whichever candidate goes to Salem to bring that, our district, to Salem in a common sense way that is going to have all of our concerns addressed and do that fairly across the board. I'm hoping that we can address these challenges together. And I think that there may be changes in the legislature that will allow for more opportunities for people to come together and compromise on some of these issues. And I think that compromise is a good thing working across the board. And so you're going to be getting your ballots. You're going to be making big decisions. I'm going to be getting my ballot and making big decisions. And I hope that when you are sitting at your kitchen table, like I'm going to be at my kitchen table making that decision, that you will keep me in mind, that I am the person who is going to take common sense and our values and the challenges of Northwest rural Oregon to Salem and represent them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lady.
Yeah, I want to speak on why I'm drawn to the public service. I mentioned growing up in a town where we had a culture of coming together to fix complicated issues, not just government coming together, but civic leaders, churches, communities, business leaders, and actually trying to find solutions that could work for every single stakeholder and as much as possible. We have some very difficult challenges facing us right now, whether it be climate change or the housing affordability crisis, making sure that our schools are fully funded, not just fully funded, that we have educators to staff them, and that our community colleges provide a career pathway. So that if someone wants to change careers in order to train up and command the high cost of living here on the coast, we empower them to do so. I feel comfortable running for this position because of how many community leaders I have been speaking with in order to inform my own policy decisions and what I advocate for in the state legislature. The reason why I went to the state legislature to lobby for current technical education funding was because that is what I heard from my constituents at the time at the Tillamook Bay Community College every day, was that this program is underfunded, and because we're not able to provide enough educators, we are not able to complete our degrees on time. We need the state's help. This is about building community. This is about making sure that we can speak with every single person across the aisle. And I think it's important that when we look at our endorsements, we try to see if that reflects in them. I'm endorsed by the Independent Party of Oregon. They recognize that I have policies that would have only come off if I actually spoke with people in real estate, if I actually spoke with Republicans, if I actually spoke with everyone in our community that I possibly could, in order to bridge this divide as much as we can, in order to have very complex, very hard decisions at our state legislative level, so we can actually make progress on these. I'm not going to lie, it's going to be rough, but I hope that by bringing testimony into the legislature and having a compelling narrative, we can start to flip the script. Lastly, I believe accessibility is key. So my personal cell phone number is 971-413-1998. Please don't abuse it. Have a great night.
Thank you. And Dr. Javity.
Thank you. It's been a wonderful opportunity to get to do this and listen to the other candidates. I'm excited about the opportunity that's coming up to go, if I win in November, to Salem to represent the North Coast, because I really do think we live in the best place in Oregon. And we have unique issues and unique needs here that cross ideological boundaries. You know, Democrats and Republicans both live here, as well as non-affiliated. And what they're really looking for, in my feedback I've gotten, are just some common sense solutions to problems that we all have: high prices at the gas pump, high housing costs, not enough employees, too much grocery store food just costing too much, concerned about our children's education. And we just want some solutions. So when I go to Salem, I'm going to make our community safer. I'm going to fight for policies that reduce crime and fund our law enforcement. I'm going to try to fight for policies to make our life more affordable, lower taxes, lower fees, lower regulations. Because I think we can do this. And if we don't change direction, it's just going to get worse. And the cure is going to get more expensive and more timely. I mean, more expensive and less timely, and it may be irreparable. So while I'm not one that usually loves fear rhetoric, I really do feel like we do need to change course here. And I think we're in a great position to do that this year with the way that things are starting to shake up in Republican. So when ballots come out this week, please vote for me. And I promise to represent you guys faithfully. And as the only candidate here that has a decade history of making payroll, of investing back in the community, I think I've got the wherewithal and the drive and the excitement to go there and represent those issues that will continue to make it a great place to live. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, since they can applaud for you, I will. And really appreciate all the time that you put into this evening. I know it's a lot and we're coming towards the end. So good luck to all of you. And congratulations on your campaigns. And we'll see how November 8th turns out. And thank you again. And with that, I think we will call this an evening. Just be on the lookout, candidates, for that email with the link that if you'd like to share it, tonight's recording. And I will let everybody get back to their evening. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you so much,
Thank you, Lisa.
Yep.